Well folks, it's official. Beyond the Wire has a release date of October 21st, 2020. This is a game I have been keeping a very serious eye on for pretty much most of this year. In fact, if you think of 2020 as a whole, there aren't a lot of interesting shooters releasing, but Beyond the Wire is certainly one of them that has been on my radar for quite a while now. And Beyond the Wire is shaping up to be one of the best, if not the best, World War I shooters on the market, and is heading into an early access state that will be early access, but won't quite be as early access as some people are thinking. For those of you unfamiliar with the game, Beyond the Wire is a World War I shooter of a hardcore variety from Redstone Interactive. What makes this game incredibly unique though is that it's going to be using the same codebase that powers Squad, the game. Now Squad actually very recently just left early access with relatively great optimization and 50v50 player counts, and the same could be expected here in Beyond the Wire, and due to having such a really solid foundation, movement system, ballistic system, and most of the systems in the game will work in a very detailed and complex way, much like they do in Squad, and it's something very much that I think a lot of people are looking forward to. The feel of the game, the way it handles, and especially the way it functions will resemble a lot of what we've seen in Squad, obviously with some twists due to the different setting. Now in this video today, I want to run through what we know about Beyond the Wire, but also why you should be excited about this game as well. This is a title that I feel has a lot of potential, and in fact in my opinion will likely crown itself the best World War I shooter title. Now I do want to leave a little disclosure to this video. I have actually played Beyond the Wire. In fact, I've played it quite extensively, but due to non-disclosure agreements, I'm unable to tell you about my experiences. All I can say is that I've played it. However, it doesn't stop me from talking about reasons why you should be excited for it based on public information. So I'm going to try and point you guys towards the stuff that looks really cool. So for those of you unaware, so far Beyond the Wire features two factions, the German Empire and the French Republic, all of which will have extensive classes with various different types of weaponry. Now whilst this game does have an emphasis on standard issue rifles, you will see shotguns, light machine guns, heavy machine guns, explosive ordnances, as well as a full feature set of melee weapons. There is a full-blown melee system in this game, and based on what we've seen so far, it seems to function a little bit like For Honor, with different blocking and attacking poses based on where your mouse is on the screen. There's also bayonets and bayonet charges, which is something you would regularly expect from, any kind of World War I shooter. We can expect the Germans and the French in more or less all of their full glory at launch for early access, but there will be further additions in the future. I would expect that we'd likely see the British, probably the Russians, and we may even see some fights from down in Africa. Who knows? This game spans World War I, it could go anywhere, and we have absolutely no idea. So far, each faction at the moment has anywhere sort of between about 6 and 10 weapons so far that we've seen confirmed, and they also have emplacements such as heavy machine guns. Each faction also has the ability to call in call-ins via a leadership role, and we're talking on this line of things like artillery strikes, gas strikes, and also smoke barrages. So these things are called in by a flare gun, which is fired across the map and lands on the destination of the target. And of course, that's probably going to have some pretty disastrous close-quarters scenarios. I could see some people making that flare go in some very bad places. It's worth noting that this game will feature 3 different maps at launch by the looks of things, one based off the Argonne Forest, one based off the Somme, and one based off of Passchendaele. And whilst they will have different names, the reason for that is because they don't feel that the maps themselves will encompass the whole area. If you call a map Passchendaele and it's not the whole stretch of Passchendaele, well, it doesn't really make sense. So they've called them smaller segments of those areas and will likely make more maps to introduce other areas of Argonne, Passchendaele, and the Somme in the future. And yes, this is no alternate take on history. There will be some weapons where the timeline doesn't quite add up, and that's fine. That's expected with a World War I shooter, otherwise the classes would be very limited. However, in terms of maps, locations, uniforms, everything in this game is aiming to be historically accurate and authentic. This is not something like a Battlefield 5 escapade. The reason they have chosen these iconic locations and iconic weaponry such as the French Chauchat is because they are trying to build a true-to-life authentic experience. Speaking of authenticity, the character models in this game are rather extensive. The Germans, the French have some pretty impressive character models that do vary based on the class that you've chosen. The game also features a fully fledged animation system, which uses a lot of the animations that we've seen in Squad before. The idea of this is that they want to achieve a fluid animation system that doesn't feel janky. I think a lot of other World War I games at the moment do sometimes feel a little bit sluggish in places, and if you've played anything like Squad and Postscriptum, then the movement in this will feel very, very similar. There's also free look, so don't worry about that. I know many people do question whether or not free look will be in this game. It does exist. It's something that exists in all titles using the OWI codebase, and there's also a gore system as well, so you will see dismemberment and things like that based on the explosive rounds that tend to hit targets. There is also a rather impressive ragdoll system too. This works hand in hand with the ballistic system, which if you haven't played Squad or any OWI codebase game, is a fully fledged ballistic system with different calibers, different physics, and various different iterations of bullet velocity, bullet drop, and everything in between. It's a very complex but punchy and enjoyable system, and the more you learn your weapons, the more lethal you will be with them. There will be two game modes during the early access launch, one called Frontlines and one called Assault. In Frontlines, you have to capture a number of sectors within the front line of the battlefield in order to advance forward and push the enemy back to their HQ spawn, at which if you capture that, you win the game. In Assault, there are two or possibly multiple different objectives, a bit like capture flags in Squad, that you have to gain control of in order to move the front line in a different location. This is pretty cool. Both of them will have different intensities, with Frontlines aiming to be a much more large-scale holistic style battle, and the Assault mode perhaps being a little bit more intense due to the emphasis on slightly less objectives. There are multiple sections within this game as well. This game kind of handles leadership structures a little bit like other tactical shooters, in the sense that there is a command section, an infantry section, an artillery section, a recon section, and a machine gun section. The command section features a signaler and platoon commander. The signaler is somebody who identifies locations for ordnances to be called in. The infantry section features an infantry officer, which is the squad leader, standard issue rifleman loadouts, a medic, a light machine gun, a grenadier, and an assault class. Now, for those of you who are unsure of what the assault class is, think a little bit like the Battlefield 1 trench raider. The idea is they're quick, they've got pistols, shotguns, or melee weapons, and they are there to absolutely clear trenches through. There's also a machine gun detachment with a HMG crew NCO and a HMG crewman. They can build and place machine guns and utilize them across the maps, as well as an artillery detachment as well. There's also a scout and sniper detachment, which you've seen in games such as Hell Let Loose. One of the maps in the game actually happens to be a night map, which is based on the ARGONNE forest, and that's something I think is pretty cool looking out for, considering that there will be night maps in the game with actual usable flare guns to identify enemy positions. Now, another quick note, something that I think is really cool about this game is not only do we have this really great movement system, ballistic system, gore and animation system, the map design of the game has been very, very intelligent. Now, many World War I games make the mistake of going far too realistic in some places, and you find that the front lines of the game tend to just be open flats of land that you just get executed over. Now, whilst that is the case in Beyond the Wire, and there are lots of stretches of no man's land, one of the very intelligent things they've done in this game is add numbers of dips, dives, craters, and micro cover to make it possible to maneuver between trench to trench intelligently and in a way that won't get you killed. You'll notice little hill defilades, places to throw smoke grenades, and really routes between the different objectives in order to be effective. So rather than just getting constantly mowed down by a machine gunner, which yes was realistic for World War I, but ultimately doesn't result in fun gameplay, there will be options for your team to charge strategic locations. You'll find things like bomb craters, where there's just these massive holes in the ground that you can get down into in order to move position to position and cover to cover. This is something that I think differentiates the game quite substantially, and is something worth knowing about. Well folks, that's it for this video today. I hope you guys are interested in Beyond the Wire. It releases on October 21st. There's a link in the description below. By the way, this video isn't sponsored or a hashtag ad. I've just been really interested in this game, and I'm excited to see it take off really well. Leave a like, leave a comment, leave a sub, and I'll catch you in the next video.